Your Eminence, to begin with, let me express deep gratitude for being with us. We are very happy to have you in our university, and above all, for me personally, for our university community and from our people, we would like to thank you and in your person, American people and Catholic Church in the United States for incredible support, solidarity, and being with us in this period when we struggle for our freedom, for our dignity. And for some people maybe who reading New Testament, sometimes it's difficult to understand what church has to do with the military when the gospel is proclaiming of peace. What are the peculiarities of military chaplaincy as a phenomenon? Could you explain for us a little bit?
Yes, and first of all, thank you very much, Father, for the opportunity to be here and to join you in this conversation. I think it's very important to remember that military chaplaincy is basically service to people. So the military, their families, are people who also need, in our case, the sacraments. They need counsel, they need good advice. And so the chaplaincy serves those needs. It provides, for Catholics in the United States military, it provides all of the sacraments, provides religious education for their children. It provides the program of Christian initiation, the order of Christian initiation for those who are interested in the Catholic Church and are not yet Catholics. It provides preparation for matrimony. So it meets a number of needs that the individual soldier or airman or sailor has, and it's a response to those needs. We like to say that when a military person raises his right hand to defend the Constitution, he does not decline his own right to religious freedom, which in the United States Constitution is the First Amendment, that you are always able to practice the faith in which you believe. And so the military chaplaincy exists to make sure that that right or that privilege is a reality. And of course, we recognize that it's not only a privilege given by the government, but a right given by Almighty God to be able to worship Him as you choose, as you see fit. Also, I think it's very important to recognize, at least in the United States military, the chaplain has a role as a counselor also to the command, so that it's his responsibility if something unethical or immoral is going on, it's his responsibility to inform the command of that. And so in that standpoint, from that standpoint, he's very free to speak, and he's able to give that advice, which can be very important in certain circumstances.
Before you was elected and appointed as Archbishop for military around the world, you had quite different experience as a nuncio on diplomatic service. That switch, I would say, or that change, it was difficult for you, or it was natural and you...
There were some adjustments, but I actually thought that diplomacy was a very good, particularly diplomacy of the Holy See, was a very good preparation for my current role, because for one thing, it prepared me for working in different environments with different people. It provided me with the experience of a much wider vision of the world than just the United States, which is very important, I think, in the 21st century. It also, because of those wider horizons, and because of the fact that I'm asked to be a pastor, not to be a military strategist, it was a good basis from which to work. It also, because so much has happened where we work together with other military chaplaincies, the fact that I served in different countries and speak different languages allowed me to an immediate entree into that world. And so I think it was very helpful. There were some other skills that I had to learn, but particularly fundraising and that sort of thing. But for the most part, I thought the diplomatic preparation was a good preparation.
Recently, he was elected as a president of Catholic Conference of Bishops of the United States. And it's additional huge responsibility, because of you have a couple hundred bishops whom you have to be like example, and you have to lead them, you have to unite them. They come from different states, from different backgrounds, and how your service as a military archbishop helps you in your new role as a main archbishop in the United States right now.
Well, I think it's helpful in the sense that already, because all of my priests come from different dioceses and different religious orders, I'm already in touch with many of the bishops. I think now, for me, one of the major concerns will be balancing my expenditure of time so that I'm able to continue to lead the Archdiocese, but at the same time fulfill the requirements of the office of President of the USCCB, and meet the needs of the conference. And I hope to be able to find that balance. One thing that facilitates a little bit the work is that my offices and my residence are in Washington, D.C., actually within walking distance of the conference headquarters. So I'm able to, if I want, I can actually walk to the Catholic Conference of Bishops in the United States, to their headquarters.
I know that American troops are located around the world, and you visited them in a very dangerous place like Iraq, Afghanistan, and today you come to Ukraine, where war is in hot phase. And this is something, some kind of surrealistic for us, because of in the middle of Europe in 21st century, we have incredible, unspeakable cruelty. And like a Christian, we're trying to sort it out, how to deal with this, how to live within this strange and ungodly reality. So how you behave and what you talk when you come to your soldiers, to your, I would say, spiritual son and daughters, when they are in the circumstances for which we are not created. It's something alien for us.
I think the message is always a double, and I think one part of that message is always to be faithful to our belief in Jesus Christ, which also means that we accomplish our duties. I think if you look at the gospel, all of the interactions between Jesus and his public ministry and soldiers are very positive. You have the example of the centurion. You have the example of others who come, and the Lord always urges them to accomplish their duty with fairness, with equity. So I think that's one part of the message that we give. The second one is one of consolation and encouragement, particularly in this situation where soldiers are asked to fight for their own freedom and for their homeland. There is a definite need to offer that word of encouragement to that they don't lose heart. I thought in speaking with some Ukrainian soldiers in the hospital in Latvia, I was touched by their desire to return home and to continue the struggle against an unjust aggression. And that touched me very deeply. By the same token, and I think you would join me in this, we lament that that struggle is necessary in what should be more enlightened times, when men and women should be able to sit down at the conference table and resolve difficulties rather than fighting wars. But unfortunately, we can't always decide how others will act, and so we have to respond as best as we can.
We experience very big support of Americans and Catholics during the last 10 months, and if it's possible, could you share with us how the ordinary Americans see the war in Ukraine, and how Catholics see the war in Ukraine?
I think certainly the average citizen in the street sees it as an act of unjust aggression against Ukraine. And so there's a desire, part of our own history is to resist injustice. And we have that repeatedly both in the beginnings of the United States and then again during the Civil War in the United States. So I think there is that reaction. On the part of American Catholics, there's also the desire to support our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. There's a desire to respond to basic needs of people who have suffered an invasion, and I think that's why the response has been so generous. There is also a sizable Ukrainian community in the United States, particularly the Ukrainian Catholic Church, and that has been a catalyst to enable us to respond in a more direct way, because we hear about what is being experienced, and that always elicits a response. And traditionally, at least in the United States, Catholics have been very generous when they're asked to respond to a need. Even it goes back even to the end of the 19th century, when Mother Frances Cabrini, later the first saint with an American passport, she was born in Italy, but we claim her as our own, and she would ask even the poor communities to contribute to those who were poorer than they were. And she was able to get a response. And I think that's fundamental to our notion of living the faith, is responding to those in need, even if it means sacrificing something that we might need.
When the war started, our university was trying to figure out what we can bring to the society, to this awful situation, to come to just peace. And I would like to ask you, what, in your opinion, the role of the education in Catholic University in the war? When we ask, amid the situation which we not created, but we have to deal with.
Well, I think the response again is perhaps threefold. First, we have to educate men and women to listen to each other. So, because the first stage of avoiding war is dialogue. So I think that's very important. And I think in a university, which is a community of scholars, a community that learns and that teaches, that's an important lesson too, that the importance of listening to the other and of trying to avoid conflicts before they come to points of arms. So I think that's the first role of the university. The second, which you've just demonstrated very, very laudably, is to be an agency of assistance to those in need. You've provided lodging to those internally displaced persons. You've provided supplies to the soldiers on the front. You've organized volunteers to assist those most in need. So while they're here to study, they're also learning by the witness of others. And that, of course, is fundamental to the role of a Catholic university, because we want to be good witnesses. We want to be effective witnesses. And I think you've been teaching by example here. And then thirdly is the importance of perhaps being that forum where men and women with differing views can sit down and exchange those views in a setting that is based on fundamental values, and also the necessary education that has to be at the basis of any sort of reasonable dialogue. So really the third role reports back to the first. But I think those are three ways that a Catholic university can make a contribution, even in a time of war, in the hopes always that at some future time we avoid armed conflicts.
When you visit different places as an archbishop, you also communicate not only with the soldiers, with the men and women, you communicate with your priest, and maybe they are sharing with you their stories, how they spread good news, what obstacles they are meeting in these different places they serve with the gospel, and taking on account all the stories you hear all the time, taking on account your experience, and remembering your preparation in the seminary with all these courses of pastoral theology we have. What would you suggest for us in Ukraine? What kind of courses or maybe steps we have to start, or we have to do just to be able adequately to respond for the challenges we have in front of us?
Well, I think, obviously, in addition to those courses in fundamental theology and scriptures, which are always the basis of everything that we do, because whatever is authentically pastoral always begins with the truth. And I think we always have to keep that in mind when we're engaged in pastoral activity. But secondly, the importance of being catalysts for dialogue, being able to listen. I think that one of the great functions that a chaplain offers to a person in the military is the ability to listen to that person, because so often, particularly if they're in a lower rank, if they're of a lower rank, they don't have as much opportunity to express what they're experiencing or what their troubles and frustrations are. And I think a chaplain offers that possibility to listen. So it's very important to be able to listen and to see where the other is, so that you might be better able to help that person grow or help that person resolve whatever situation of conflict happens. One of the things that my priests tell me is that in a situation of war, soldiers begin to ask fundamental questions about the afterlife, for example, about the purpose of life, about themselves and their actions. And so it's a great opportunity to be able to deepen their understanding of the faith, to lead them to a closer relationship with Jesus Christ, and perhaps even to, which wouldn't be as much a problem with the Eastern Church, but to perhaps fill in some of the sacramental gaps that have occurred because maybe they weren't confirmed, or as we separate that from baptism. And so this is an opportunity also to fulfill some of those gaps in religious education. When the United States was at war in both Afghanistan and Iraq, we discovered that in the evenings, soldiers and sailors and airmen had a lot of time. And so we did use that time to instruct in the faith, or maybe in church history, or in many different things, Bible study. But it was a great opportunity to seize that opportunity and to draw on the willingness that these military men and women might have to learn and to deepen their faith.
During this last 10 months, most of us here in Ukraine every day meet with people who are wounded physically and spiritually, emotionally. And what would you suggest for our priests when they are not prepared, you know, when they are not trained to meet such big amount of daily human pain? How can they react? How can they, I would say, diminish or facilitate someone's pain?
Well, I think important, as I said earlier, is listening, letting the other person communicate, because that sometimes helps too, to alleviate pain, just to talk to another about what you're experiencing or what has happened. I think that's fundamental. I think also to assure them of the hope that comes through faith in Jesus Christ. Remember, we are a people of hope because we are Christians, and it's good to be able to encourage people in that hope, even when everything seems so difficult, so impossible. And I think perhaps within Ukraine you don't appreciate this, but outside Ukraine we see a tremendous example of perseverance and hope, because a whole nation has responded to unjust aggression and really resisted an overwhelming force. And I think that's certainly a sign of hope for others, and perhaps it can be interpreted also for people who are living this moment to see, in that response, some hope for the future.
You mentioned a couple of times word just or unjust and justice. What steps we have to do to explain for the society that as a Christians we aim always for just peace, and it's not means that we have to give up. Exactly. But what in your opinion we have to do just to clarify our Catholic position in this issue?
Well, I think it's very important to remember that true peace can only be built on justice. So peace really in any terms does not mean appeasement. It does not mean giving up. It does not mean surrendering. It means striving to build that foundation on which a true peace can exist. Because without justice, it's impossible to have peace. It would be, all analogies limp, but it would be as if to say for example, the African Americans in the United States in the 1960s, to see, oh, well, you should just accept segregation because it's produced a peaceful society. You shouldn't reclaim your rights because that disrupts people. And yet, Martin Luther King, who was a great example of someone who strove with very peaceful means to achieve justice, but those were, that's where the analogy doesn't really pay off, because in this situation that would not work. But I think that you know, even to sit down at the conference table to achieve peace, you have to be ready to agree on certain principles. And a basic principle in international law is the integrity of a nation and its boundaries. That's nothing new. And you know, we've seen that repeatedly in world history, at least in European world history, where that integrity of a people is not respected, you really cannot establish peace.
Your Eminence, I am very grateful for your time. I know that your schedule of being in Ukraine is very tight, but I guess all our listeners and friends of UKU will happy to listen to your wise reflections. And at the end, I would like you to say a couple of words for our students, for our university, and for our Ukrainians.
Well, again, Father, I thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you. I am deeply grateful for the opportunity to be at the Catholic University and to visit Ukraine, particularly in this time. And I pray daily for peace. I pray for those who suffer. I particularly pray for those who have given up their lives for the freedom of a noble people. And I want to encourage the students here at the university to study diligently so that they can build the society and the country that will serve the people of this land well, because you always need good instruments is a bad word when you're talking about people, but you need good instruments to build a good, just society that this people really merits. And I consider it an honor and a privilege to visit and to spend some time with you.
Thank you very much, Your Eminence.
Thank you.